Okay, folks, welcome back to Syndicated Source Material. What you're about to hear is something a little bit different. This is a re-release of one of our older episodes, and I mean older for sure. We're going all the way back to 2015. I can't believe that's 11 years ago. Back then, we tackled Maximum Carnage, all 14 parts of it. And we did it in the way we used to do things. Big, long, marathon style, actually divided into 2 parts, but pretty time-intensive episodes. And yeah, that was fun, but it also means that those episodes aren't exactly the easiest thing to jump into nowadays. So what I've done is I've gone back and cleaned things up a bit, broke it into smaller chunks, about 15 to 20 minutes each, so you guys can experience the whole story one piece at a time. Now, listening back to this, kind of like opening up a time capsule, really. You've got me, trying to keep everything on track, summarize what's going on, make sense of a story that is, let's be honest, chaotic. You got Benjamin J. Cologne, who is absolutely ready to analyze this thing from top to bottom, talking creative teams, inconsistencies, and whether or not this story actually works. And then you've got Jason Teasley, who's basically the living embodiment of Carnage fandom. He's here for the chaos, the insanity, and everything that makes this story feel like peak 90s comics. And that's really what the episode is. It's 3 different perspectives. One trying to guide it, one trying to critique it, and one of us just enjoying the ride. And Maximum Carnage, well, it gave us plenty to talk about. This is one of the biggest, most excessive crossover events of the 1990s. Multiple writers, multiple artists, characters everywhere, and a story that just keeps escalating. Sometimes it works, sometimes it really doesn't, but it's never boring. So whether you've never experienced Maximum Carnage before, or you remember it from back in the day, maybe even from the old video game, this is a chance to get through it with us. So sit back, get ready, and let's head back to 2015. Maximum Carnage begins now.
Syndicated Source Material.
Tonight, we've been wanting to do this episode since the beginning of Source Material. This evening's selection was chosen by my friend and co-host of the Cheap Seats, a guy by the name of Jason Teasley, who joins us tonight. Jason Teasley, is your hair red, sir?
Yes, I am a psychotic ginger, and I embody the essence of Cletus Kasady on a daily basis.
Cletus Kasady, my friends. We are talking Carnage, folks. Maximum Carnage. And I could not do a Spider-Man-related show without bringing on talented, gifted title card artist for Long Road to Ruin and Soul Exodus, our good buddy, Benjamin J. Cologne. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, but you may regret having me here.
He does not bear good tidings, folks. He is frothing at the mouth to tear this thing apart. Is that an apt description?
I do have a few different parts marked for destruction.
Well, that's good. We will enjoy hearing your input on this. That's absolutely 100% certain. So, Maximum Carnage. Teasley, first off, this is the one that you wanted to, you came out, I think this was one of the first ones that you said you wanted to do. Why? Give us an idea as to why.
Well, of course, being the extraordinarily amazing fan of Carnage that I am, ever since Carnage's debut, I've just been drawn to the character due to my winning personality and my love for everything chaotic. As Robert Winfrey would say, I'm kind of the Resident Evil ginger. So Cletus gave me a character to kind of relate with because he is nothing but utter chaos and destruction wherever he goes. So I was drawn to the character in general, and this is probably the arc that really got me into becoming into Spider-Man comics in general is because of everybody that's incorporated into the Maximum Carnage arc. Sometimes it was written pretty well. Sometimes it was written horrible.
It's a 14-part story. Tonight we're only doing parts 1 through 7. Very extensive crossover across the Spider titles. That was pretty prevalent back then. A story arc taken over and written by 3-4 different people. I imagine it's tough to stay on track. Teasley, is this one that you grabbed off the shelf?
Yeah, the Spider-Man Unlimited 1, which is the kickoff to Maximum Carnage. I actually have an autographed copy of it. And
oh, really?
That's how I came up. Yeah, I can. The illustrator who done it is that autograph that is on it. It's actually one of the I think it's 10 of like 200. So on the authenticity certificate, it's like number 10 of 200. That was kind of cool because back in the 90s, an autographed comic book was kind of a big deal. It's
a number one issue was a big deal. Oh my gosh, it's number 1.
Yeah, especially kicking off such a huge arc that Maximum Carnage was to be, because right there it says 1 of 14. So thinking back then, hindsight, I was like, well, this is going to be kind of a big deal. So I picked it up. Then my mom at the time worked at a little mom and pop grocery store that got comic books in, and I was like, well, I've got the autograph one. I want to keep it in mint condition, so I'm just going to get all the trades. So every time the guy that brought the comic books in would make sure that he had one issue of the Maximum Carnage series to drop off. Every new one got dropped off to my mom, and so I collected the entire series. I fell in love with the character even more because Carnage is just that. He is just utter chaos. Death, destruction is his forte, and that's what I'm all about. If anybody has listened to any podcast I'm on, I always bring chaos and destruction. So I kind of rival the chaos instance of what Carnage and Cletus Kasady embody.
Now, Benjamin, can you give us an idea of where Carnage came from?
I was lucky enough to have read the first Carnage story. This was back when you could get subscription comics delivered to your home.
Yeah.
That was right around the time that I was, well into my Spider-Man reading. But Carnage's origin comes directly out of Venom. In that first Carnage story, it was revealed that the alien race that Eddie Brock's symbiote belongs to reproduces once per generation. And when Venom's symbiote reproduced, it was sort of in the process of finding Eddie Brock while he was locked up in Rikers Island maximum security prison in New York City. His cellmate was Cletus Kasady, who was a psychopathic serial killer. When the alien symbiote broke Eddie Brock out of jail, it left behind its offspring, who bonded with Kasady and became Carnage. So it's give a homicidal maniac phenomenal cosmic power and see what happens.
Yeah. This guy is off the hook insanity. And just like Benjamin said, the guy's a definite psychopath. The difference between Venom and Carnage here, other than the visual, Venom's black costume, Carnage's red costume. Eddie, at this point in time, the Spider-Man comics has he gathered a conscience? We're talking about Eddie Brock Venom. He's got he's fighting like a vigilante now. He's still on the lunatic fringe, I guess you would say, but Venom at this point in time, he's definitely not got the Jones to kill Spider-Man, because that's all you saw when Venom was around in his early issues, was just the tongue coming out of his mouth, brains, wanting to eat brains. We've kind of graduated a little bit from that. We're a little bit further from that in this series. We're obviously going to see Venom.
I'll put it this way, sort of the difference between Venom and Carnage, I guess, if you want to talk if you want to compare it to something like Venom is like Dexter and then Carnage is Hannibal Lecter. Venom has a code, his own logic for who he kills and why. And Carnage has absolutely none. Carnage kills everybody.
Okay, I got a question for that, Ben. You said that Venom lives by the code. Do you think that's due to when the Symbionite had bonded with Peter, and that the Symbionite actually has still retained some of the... It kind of was... had a vendetta against Peter, but still got imprinted by some of Peter's DNA that created the code.
Brock was an investigative reporter before he got mixed up with the alien. He wasn't necessarily dangerous. It was that hatred of Spider-Man that drove him over the edge, and that's why he was able to bond so well with the alien, because the alien also hated Spider-Man, and they kind of like bonded over mutual hatred, and they have this overriding, desire to kill him above just about everything else.
Well, before we get into the issue, one more question for you, Benjamin. When Carnage first came out, were you excited to see this new villain, or were you kind of on the fence? What was your take when you first saw Carnage?
Well, if anybody cares to do the math, I think I was about 9 years old when the first Carnage story came out. I was right around 9-10 years old. So the first glimpse I saw of Carnage was just a preview of the cover to the first issue he appeared in the back of Amazing Spider-Man comic a few months earlier, and he looked really cool. And he looked, it was like Venom, only had like with different like weirder powers, and because since it's a theme in most Spider-Man comics that Spider-Man's getting his ass kicked on the cover, and that happened to be one of them, and it looked interesting. And when the very first thing Carnage does in the first story he appears in is kill a character that's been like a minor supporting character in Amazing Spider-Man for like at least the previous couple of years. Right off the bat, you get an idea of what he's about. By the end of the first issue, you're told everything you need to know about him, what Spider-Man is dealing with. That issue ends with Spider-Man deciding he needs to team up with Venom to take out Carnage. So given everything we had known about Venom and everything that we know about how much he hates Spider-Man and what lengths Spider-Man had gone to stop him, the fact that he came to this realization of, this guy is so dangerous and stronger than I am that I have to team up with this guy who wants to kill me and probably eat me in order to stop him. That was a big deal. That was a good introduction. I enjoyed the first Venom, the first Carnage story a lot. I always say, and I say this about Venom too, because I'm not the biggest Venom fan. I like Carnage a little bit more just because he's more straightforward in what he's about. But I'll also say I like Carnage in small doses. The first Carnage story was a 3-part story, and that was a small dose. Maximum Carnage is an overdose.
I agree with you there.
Maximum Carnage is an overdose in the same way that Reanimator was an overdose, in that the corpse is dead and resurrected and then killed again.
Yeah, that's a very apt comparison. We're covering the first 7 of 14, folks, and honestly, I can't think of any other story arc that's ever went, part 14. This is probably the longest story arc I think I've ever read, and most likely ever cover on here, I assume. But anything off the top of my head, this was an excess to the nth degree with trying to beat you over the head with a very cool-looking character and all sorts of ancillary characters. We're going to get into that. But first issue, I'll quickly summarize. Just like Teasley said, we got Spider-Man Unlimited #1, carrying a $3.95 price tag. That's because this is a fairly large issue. The story itself, Maximum Carnage, is not that long, but there's like 2 or 3 other little stories at the back. Almost feels like an annual, but it's a bigger version of Spider-Man. One of the first things that caught my eye was Ron Lim. I remember telling you, Benjamin, I was like, holy crap, Ron Lim is doing this. I was all excited. And then, of course, I get to issue 2, and I'm completely let down. I thought, I have to get rid of my 2014, 2015 sense of comic books and go back to the 90s where it was like Marvel was just scatterbrained, and whoever got a hold of the issue drew it and wrote it, And that's what we see a lot of here. But Ron Lim, the same one that brought us the Infinity Gauntlet, gosh, I was excited. And beautiful art in here. I personally love the art. But story-wise, we get Cletus Kasady, who's locked up, and they're bringing him forward, and he ends up escaping. The Carnage symbiote comes out of his arm, and he proceeds to turn into Carnage, and of course, nothing but carnage ensues in the Ravencroft Institute, where he kills everybody. He just starts laying them to waste. So that's your first 4 or 5 pages, is Cletus Kasady escaping Ravencroft. We're introduced in this issue, and we'll talk a little bit about the side story that's going on here in a second. But in this issue, we're introduced to a few other villains. Teasley, let me get your opinion on our beautiful black-haired Shriek. What do you think of this chick?
I'm pretty sure that she was a KISS wannabe fan member that couldn't make the cut and got kicked out of the KISS army.
She does make a lot of references to being a groupie. Pretty proud of that, too. Throughout this series, she was a groupie, and the powers that she has, it's some type of sonic powers. Is that right, Benjamin?
That's right. That's what we first find out kind of out of nowhere a couple of pages later on, once her and Carnage get together and break out of the Institute. However, as a nod to what kind of inconsistency we're in for as the story goes on, she sort of pulls a sonic blast out of nowhere. That would be the first, but not the last time that Shriek will pull a random superpower out of her ass. So just stick a pin in that, and we'll get back to that a few issues down the line.
I assume this is a character that's been referenced. There's a bit of a history. Was she completely made up for this series? Or
yes.
Right, that answers that.
I think they actually did a pretty good job of linking her origin to Cloak and Dagger, who we'll be seeing in the next part of the story. That was a pretty good way to go about doing it. I appreciated how they tried to work that out.
Now, he meets up with Shriek in the Ravencroft Institute, and Carnage is like, apparently she's cheering on Carnage as he's slaying all these workers there. Carnage pretty much takes her along with him to go on a killing spree. Carnage is... Teasley, what's Carnage's motivation here? Does he just plan on going out to New York City and laying waste to everybody?
Well, his game plan, as he states, is, one, they awaken the symbionite through this doctor who thinks she can cure psychopaths. Anybody knows that. Trying to root around in the Kasady's head, as the backstories we read, is a scary thought in itself. Through the testing, they awaken the Carnage symbionite. He gets a thrill out of just murdering people, and the fact that he says that as soon as Spider-Man and Venom find out that he's loose, they're going to come after him. So what's the best strategy? To go after them first and try to catch them off guard. And also, you got the little subplot in the first couple of pages of Harry Osborn being dead.
Yeah.
And you get the whole monologue of Harry being dead and MJ being scared for Peter. And I like how they slip a little 1993 public service announcement about smoking.
They slid that in there.
Comparing to how Harry died to smoking will kill you. And then thanks for, as Mark would say, Keenan Ivory Wayne's just pop up message at the bottom of the panel. But then you get the struggle between MJ and Peter as saying that, losing Harry kind of makes them rethink a lot of things, and that Peter agrees to quit being Spider-Man for a week or two, which we kind of find out lasts more like a day. So,
my honest opinion, I think in these 7 issues, we're looking at a day or two's worth of time.
I don't even think it's a complete day, because when he goes to the Chinese restaurant, they're talking about it on the radio. It might have been like an afternoon. They had the funeral, went back from the funeral, changed clothes, ordered Chinese food, and next thing you know, Peter hears Carnage's lips.
There's a very screwed up timeline going on here.
And we have the backstory about the whole dealing with the death of Harry, and is it his ex-wife or his wife? Because Molten Man is hanging out with that girl. Is that right? With his ex-wife?
This is Liz Allen.
Sister.
This is Liz Allen, who has been around since almost the beginning of the comic. She's Harry's widow, and they have a son together. All of that has been since retconned by One More Day.
It had to come up. One More Day.
Yeah, and it ain't gonna be the first time. It ain't gonna be the last time either. So don't be surprised.
Oh boy. Well, as Carnage is making his way out, Carnage has escaped. Shriek's hanging out with him. They're going amongst the city, and they come across what they thought is Spider-Man hanging out in this like alley. They go down, and it turns out it is a six-armed doppelganger, which I believe is what he's called. It's doppelganger, correct? Is that right, Benjamin?
Yeah, that's what they used to call him because they couldn't think of anything better to call him. So yeah,
this guy,
why not?
This thing is like a ferocious spider. As a six-armed alien-looking beast. It looks almost like Spider-Man. If you were looking at him from afar, he would look like Spider-Man, except he's got six arms. He's got like claws, and he's got like insectoid eyes and teeth that are just rival Venoms. Now, Benjamin, can you shed light as to where this guy came from?
Spider-Man Doppelganger was part of a group of evil duplicates created by a character called Magus during the Infinity War story. One of the evil duplicates was an evil duplicate of Spider-Man who actually escaped, who was roaming around New York City. He's hooked up with another character who we will be seeing later on by the name of Demo Goblin. More on him in a little while. And they sort of were hanging out for a while, bobbing and weaving in and out of other people's crossovers up until, he sort of resurfaces in Maximum Carnage. There's not a whole lot to him. You mentioned how he looks. He's got all of Spider-Man's powers. He's stronger and faster. He can shoot razor-sharp webbing that is sort of like barbed wire. But he's kind of a mindless zombie. Yeah. He's sort of mindless and easily manipulated and easily controlled, and Shriek kind of adopts him as sort of a cross between a pet and sort of a simple-minded bastard son.
That's exactly what happens. They get into a fight first, and then Shriek takes Doppelganger under her wing. She just likes to have him there as a pet. At some point, she tells him to sick him. He has a personality of it, just mindless, and there's nothing there.
It's at this point I want to throw out here, this is actually a much more meta story in general than I had caught on to, obviously when I was 10 years old. There's a lot of, if you know what to look for, you'll see a lot of references and a lot of comparisons to the Manson family and sort of stuff like that. This is a story that wears its references and its messages and metaphors on its sleeve. The whole twisted family thing is one of them. Real briefly, when going back to Harry Osborn's funeral, Peter is sort of thinking about the idea that nobody really dies in comics, and that he says he kind of muses that all of the villains that I fight are destined to come back and haunt me at some point or another, except for Harry, is what he says. Little did we know. But stuff like that, and stuff like that's gonna come up again soon. This is the beginning of Carnage and Shriek building their own homicidal family and going on their rampage, and that's a big theme of the whole story.
Yeah, definitely. So right now we're talking. We got Carnage, we've got Shriek, and now we've got Doppelganger added to the list. Just like Teasley was saying, Peter sees it on the news as he's going out to get dinner, and he says, well, crap, can't let this go on. Peter Parker rips his shirt off, has the Spider-Man costume underneath, and proceeds to swing into action. He ends up running into Shriek and Doppelganger first. As he's fighting these two villains, he doesn't realize they're lined up with Carnage yet. And he takes a real good shot from Doppelganger to the ribs. And that's going to come up in a few issues, too. I wrote ribs down here like 3 or 4 times in my notes because it's a way of humanizing Peter Parker. He takes this good shot to the ribs, and he feels it throughout most of this series. As he's fighting Doppelganger and Shriek. He then finds out that Carnage, they're aligned with Carnage. He ends up knocking Shriek out. Doppelganger feels sorry for her, grabs her up, and after nailing Peter Parker a good one, takes off with Shriek and leaves Peter Parker in the middle of an alley, who passes out near the end of this issue in the middle of an alley because of the shot he took to the ribs. The final part of this issue is Carnage making his way to the Daily Bugle. This makes me think that Carnage and Jameson have had a run-in before.
Because in the very first Carnage storyline, Carnage kidnaps Jameson with the intention of publicly executing him on the center stage of a rock concert happening in Madison Square Garden. He doesn't like Jameson very much, and that's right around the time when Spider-Man and Venom sort of team up to save him. So, yeah, they've met. Jameson is traumatized. This is a good Jameson line, too, when he finds out that Carnage is loose, and he says, I just remembered I'm late for a most pressing engagement in Paris. That was pretty good.
Yeah, he's ready to get the hell out. I thought there was going to be more to this, which there might be more to this later on down the road. The next issue, really, the front cover makes it look like Jameson is being held hostage by Carnage, and we're going to have a big arc between, Peter having to save, like, J. Jonah Jameson or something. But just to let you guys know, that isn't what happens, really. Carnage shows up at the end of this issue, and you're like, oh, crap, he's going to kill him. Sorry, spoiler alert. We'll talk about that here at issue 2. All right, that's the end of issue 1. Anything you wanted to cover there, Teasley? Anything I missed or anything you wanted to point out?
No, actually, the only thing that the whole end of issue 1 is the last panel you guys was talking about is, I think it's just excellent drawn. It's just the look of Carnage basically saying, we have a past and you're going to help me pull Venom into the light so I can kill him. You're going to be an accessory to all this chaos. And like Benjamin said, the line that he says, I have a pressing matter in prayers, is quite amusing. But other than that, I think we've done a good service to issue 1.
Carnage is drawn like he's just liquid. That's what's so awesome visually with Carnage as a character. Even though there's a human being underneath, his costume is in constant motion. I remember reading a review, or maybe I was watching a review on it, but that was like one of the artist's main goals, was to make his costume look really motion-oriented. That is probably the best descriptor that separates Venom from Carnage, because you don't see a whole lot of that on Venom. The symbiote's there, but it's just straight up a costume. It makes him look like a beast, but you don't have all that going on with the costume. Benjamin, anything else on issue 1 before we go to issue 2?
I guess it's worth mentioning at this point, you brought it up a little bit, and this is where we're going to start to see a couple of things come into play where this story was juggled between 4 different writers. Some of them were good, some of them are not. And the problem with that is that consistency between issues starts flying out the window. We've got at least 2 writers who I actually love and grew up on. We've got David Michelini, who co-created Carnage, who's got a hand in this story. Probably not as big a hand as he should have had. J.M. DeMatteis, who actually wrote the death of Harry Osborn of this issue of Spectacular Spider-Man that this references. One of my favorite, probably my single favorite issue of any superhero comic ever. There are a lot of bright spots in the issues those guys write. Part 2 is Web of Spider-Man number 101, written by Terry Kavanagh, who is not as good as either of those other 2 people. During the Web of Spider-Man issues, you're going to start seeing bad puns, hackneyed dialogue, melodrama. You're going to see all those things, so take it away.
Well, we didn't say that Tom DeFalco was the writer here.
And while he was editor-in-chief of Marvel.
I was going to say, I recognize that name as editor.
Make sure to check us out tomorrow as Maximum Carnage continues, right here on the Source Material Comics Podcast.